Look what the cat drove home. Got a 67 C20. In the process of looking for a vehicle to finish this house, I ran across a couple of trucks, and I surely didn't need this one, but I couldn't pass it up. I learned how to drive on one of these, and eventually I'll make this a daily driver. It actually drives now, but with the Chevrolet 4-speed that's in it and the over 7-to-1 first gear with a 456 gear in the back and pretty wide spacing on the ratios, it's not a very user-friendly transmission for highway use. It's definitely not a going to town truck, but this thing is tough and it'll drag anything you hook behind it. But during the process of looking for, I found an old Ford. Got a pretty good price on it actually, but it's got some rust and high mileage, but everything works on it. And I used it yesterday, or day before yesterday, to drag this truck back 100 miles on a dolly. But it's actually a pretty solid truck. Came off a farm in northwest Missouri, and pretty much a one-owner truck. I think it ended up on the farm next door a couple of years ago, but it never left the area that it was in. And the guy that bought it after the original owner, he bought it with the intent of fixing it up. And you know, you're a farmer and life is busy. He just didn't ever get around to it and didn't want it just sitting in his barn, so he was going to let somebody else have a shot at it. So, but he didn't do anything really to the truck when he bought it. It's got a little rust in the rockers, but the inner rocker looks actually pretty solid. It's got just a little bit here in this cab corner. The floor in this thing is actually pretty solid though. I don't see any holes in the floor. That's a part of the old mat, but there's no holes in it. And the dash only has one little split down there on the end. But overall, it actually looks pretty presentable. I think once it's cleaned up, it'll look pretty nice. And at one point, they replaced the seat with another Chevrolet seat out of a later year, like a 69, I believe, because they didn't want to patch the other one. But I do have the original seat with the original covering on it. I was hoping someone might be able to tell me where I can get a replacement cover. I know they make them, but they're not for restoration purposes. They're just to cover your seat. And most of them that look similar have like a cloth insert. And I just as soon go back with it. On one of those vintage auto, what would you call it, upholstery distributors, I found some early model, I think it was a Ford product from the 60s, and it looked like it had a similar pattern as this. And I think I can probably mimic the seat for not very much money. It's going to end up having some seams, so I can use the regular vinyl, and then I can put in this with this embossed pattern on it. But I think I can get something that looks pretty close for not much money. And the seat frame on it actually looks pretty good. It's spent most of its life in a barn. So, I mean, even some of the paint down here on the bottom rack is still shiny. But it actually is pretty good. So I don't think it would take much to put the seat back together and get it back in the truck. And I'll probably replace the rockers, inner and outer, and put a new mat in the side of it, because I'm going to make it a driver. But with that transmission that's in it, is definitely not worth it. So I'll looking for a different rear end, but this Eaton rear end that's in it is absolutely indestructible. Got a 456 gear, and finding replacement ratios and parts is pretty hard, but they also don't ever wear out either. So someone had replaced, I wouldn't say they covered up the original wood floor in this thing with a steel deck. It sounded like a couple times a year when he was hauling hogs to sale, It must have had some kind of a metal type rack or cage or something that they slid in the back of the truck. And so they covered it up with steel deck. But the floor up underneath still looks like it's presentable. Even if I had to replace it, nothing is rotted. I mean, it could be, you know, most of the bolts and the wood and everything underneath still look good. So I might get lucky and have the bed, even though it might not look great, it's probably still functional. And I've had these got they're not the true split rims, but they do have a bead. This outer bead is detachable, and most people around here won't mess with them anymore. They won't mount them. So I bought new rims, 16 by 7 with the 8 lug pattern, and they'll still hold a hubcap. I don't think I'm going to be able to find, these are evidently pretty hard to come by for the 67s and 68s. This one probably better of the most of them, and it probably could be massaged on and made presentable. The one on the front, I take that back, I think is the better one. That one's probably could be repaired also and made look presentable for a driver. The ones on the other side must have gotten salt and mud inside, and they've rusted out on the lower portion of the rim where it was sitting for so many years. And I'm afraid that once you start messing with them, it's going to break all the way through. They won't stay on the wheel, so I'll just use those for decoration. And probably end up getting some later models. I think they're easier to find, if I'm not mistaken, like from 69 on up. And then kind of give them the same color scheme paint, kind of make it look similar. And anybody that's got one of these, I'd like to kind of stay with the vintage kind of looking bias ply tires, but not bias ply. And these are 7.5 16s. And I kind of like the look of it, the stance. What I'll probably do is raise the front end of the truck to level it out. It's kind of sagged a little bit in the front. And then it's got some bias ply 7.5 16 mud grips on the back. And unfortunately they're dry rotted. So we'll get some new rubbers on this thing, and I think I've kind of come down. I'm probably going to end up swapping this transmission out with maybe like the Tremec 5-speed. I think they have one with a first gear ratio of like 2.87 and an overdrive of I think 0.68, which would actually put this thing down into a presentable range on the highway and slow this motor down, get a little bit better fuel economy, and make it a little bit more of a user-friendly car in town. And still have a low enough gear rear end and a low enough first gear in that 5-speed. I could still pretty much tow anything I'd need to tow with it. But the old tailgate didn't spend its life on the truck. It must have been sitting somewhere where it got partial sun, because one half of it that's the original paint. Still got a little bit of shine to it. Body's got the old farmer's dents on it. Yeah, it's definitely been used, but the bed is rock solid. The frame is good. The brakes, somebody went through them a couple of years ago, and it's got a good pedal, stops straight. It's got the small window in the back for, I think 67 was the only year for that. Sounds like it might be difficult to find a back glass if something was to happen. But the drip rails, everything is still in pretty good shape. The bottom of this door, other than it starting to fester up on the, I'm not sure you're going to be able to see this, the glare, if I can get a light on. Yeah, other than got a little bit of festering and swelling up of this outer skin, but the outside of the door is still pretty good. I think this can be treated, but the bottom of the door is actually pretty good. It's actually pretty good. But you can still see the inner rocker on here, and it's actually pretty solid, but get that far to cut that out, probably go ahead and replace it. But the floor, like I said, it looks good. The edge of the door still shuts, and actually pretty good. It actually, in the gaps around, considering this truck has been beat on, it's still held up pretty well. Yeah, I think it was sold at Wilkinson Motors in Marysville, Missouri. Yeah, this was definitely a work truck. It had the painted bumpers, painted grille, and another nice surprise. Can anybody guess what motor this thing has got? Got the Chevrolet 250 6-cylinder. I got the same motor in my 67 Chevelle that I drive every day. These things are absolutely bulletproof. Not the most powerful things in the world, but they definitely make enough torque, and they'll definitely push a car down the road at 70. And you gear them right, they'll drag anything in the world behind them. Easy to repair. I mean, look, you can get to anything. I mean, a small toolkit, in wrenches, you can pretty much work on anything on this vehicle. And this one actually runs really nice. Doesn't get hot, got good oil pressure, pretty quiet. I think this was the first year for the dual master cylinder. That one looks like it's probably been on there a while, but I don't think that's the original. But for the most part, this truck is not eating up. Coming from an area where trucks up here just disintegrate, I think it's got a little bit of, well, you can tell that old paint back then was so thick, it actually cracked. That's not filler, that's just a paint crack. That old enamel paint was thick. But the hood looks good. The inner fenders and the frame on this thing is absolutely mint condition. Well, it's still got the writing on the wall from the factory. Well, this is a pretty neat old truck. I'm not sure what that even says. Oh, 2000 something. Yep, pretty good old truck. Pretty clean. And I think this thing, somebody at one point had a job at Union Carbide back many years ago. I think that was for a parking permit. Does have a, it definitely has a whiskey dent on the front. But golly, man, this is gonna, you would have to take this fender off and pound it. The sheet metal on these old trucks was so thick, you're not going to pull that dent. You're going to have to beat that one back out. And then this rocker is just a little bit worse than the other, I think. Still see the inner rocker, but it's a little bit softer. And a little bit more of the back end of it's missing. A little bit of that cab corner also. And the sad part, the reason why this bed's probably got any rust whatsoever is when they laid this piece of sheet metal in there, or this piece of steel, and then when they welded it in, they didn't leave any drain holes. So what little water stayed up against the front of the cab or the front of the bed and just rotted it out. But you can still see the wood deck underneath it. And it feels solid. So I'm hoping I might be able to trim this piece of steel out. Might have to replace this front panel, but it sounds like they're available and they're not very expensive. I don't want to make this thing pretty. I want to make it look presentable and so I can use it as a daily driver. And when I ordered my rims, I wasn't smart enough to get 5, so I have to order another one. So I'll have a spare just in case something was to happen. I don't have to worry about finding someone who'll even touch the rim. But it's a shame, the tires actually had a lot of tread on them, but they're bias ply, and not only that, the sidewalls on these things are dry rotted. But fender wells are actually solid. This thing really was used, but it wasn't just beat all up. Somebody actually took care of it. Even came with a factory helper springs on the back. Got a cantilever type rear leaf spring. This got that makes contact with that that shock pad, or that bracket on the bottom of that axle. And all that is basically dirt and a little bit, but there's no rot. That's just, I haven't seen anything. That's actually, most of it's just mud. But everything else on this truck, man, that floor on this bottom of this truck is solid as a rock. I might be able to save that bed and use it, because it doesn't appear that it's been replaced. It looks like, no, I take that back, it has been replaced. Well, that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean that they didn't nail something in the bed, because there's some nails sticking through. You can see those. But no, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think they must have nailed something in that bed at one point. Because it looks, that looks like, yeah, that's oak. That's oak. Yeah, that's oak. And it is hard as a rock. Yeah, this old truck is actually pretty clean, considering this thing actually got really used. There is a little bit of got just a bit of rust. Yeah, this thing is actually a pretty solid old truck. But if someone has actually done a Tremec swap, man, I'd be appreciative of some information and how it went for them. I think the gear ratios would work out perfect. This little motor makes most of its torque like around, I think, 2,000 RPM, 1,500, 2,000 RPM. Or maybe the torque curve was like 15 to 2,500. That would put this thing in a perfect range to make it a really functional truck for my purposes anyway. And first time I've crawled onto this truck, it's amazing how dry it is. I mean, there's not even anything dripping. I mean, these are just freaking tanks. And all the brake lines and fuel lines all look good, and they don't look like they've been replaced. Yeah, this truck didn't spend any time on the road, unfortunately. It did a little bit, and even the farmer admitted it, the guy that owned it originally. He said he was pretty good about keeping it out of the salt, but toward the end of its life, he ran it for a year or two, back and forth in the wintertime to run the hogs. And he wasn't real diligent about cleaning it, so I got a part of the cab support, this body mount area that's a little bit rusted. And this, again, that's undercoating. That ain't rust, that's just the Z-bar or something and some mud. There's a little bit of surface rust here, but it's pretty solid. Yep. This cab rail, the support, in good shape. A bit of mud. Got a little bit more of the support over here that's rusted. but it kind of looks like these bolt on or something. I'll have to put a wire wheel on that and kind of see what I'm dealing with. I mean, even it's a, god dang it, man. Even these body mounts, rubbers, I mean, they're starting to crack, but God, they're still soft. Says a lot for a truck that's 55 years old. Like I said, even the front end, that pinion seal's not even leaking. Man, this truck is actually pretty clean. I'm amazed at that floor. I'm kind of anxious to get that steel out of there and see what the floor looks like and see what it would take to patch the bed up. But somebody that knows a little bit more about these trucks, if someone knows about a 67 upholstery, and anyone who's done or knows a little bit more about that Tremec swap, I think that 287 and then that 0.68 overdrive would be ideal for this old truck. And then I'll make a shifter or modify a shifter that's in it to fit that transmission. I want to keep it looking like that's how it came. I'm not looking for a hot rod. I'm looking for a truck that's actually a daily driver that I can haul, and then I can actually take it places and the motor won't fly apart from turning 5,000 RPM running down the highway. Yep, it's a pretty good old truck. Actually, a little bit better than I thought it was. Still got the original radio, and it actually still works. There's no stations in this little town to pick up, so I can't show it to you, but it actually does work. Factory heater still works. Heater core is not leaking. Even got some it still even got the protector plate on this thing. That is too cool. That thing was 623.67. Yep, that's a cool old truck. We got the original owner's manual. Got a couple of spare gas pedals, which I'm not sure why he needs 2 extra. Oh, what's in here? It's like tobacco or something. Oh, it's some kind of a scent. Some kind of a scent. Got a new condenser and probably a set of points. Yep. And what is this? What is this? Oh, a resistor. Probably for the blower. Yep, probably for the fan. One thing, it's got 3 different window cranks, but I'll have to admit, I think that's probably the original. It matches the door handle, the styling. This was out of something else. God, these were heavy back then. I tell you, I try to show you how heavy this thing is. This thing feels like it weighs 2 or 3 pounds. That's not some cheap pop metal. That sucker almost feels like it's cast iron. Well, they made some trucks back then. Yep. It's actually not too bad. Boy, this thing only came with one visor. The other is not even any holes on the other side. Yep, it only came with one visor. And the all the gauges work. Fuel gauge works. Battery temp and oil pressure. Horn didn't work. That's all right. I fixed it in my Chevelle. That's probably a corroded contact or just a horn relay. Got the choke. This thing actually starts up pretty easy. Yep. So the fuel gauge actually does work, and the mileage on this truck is original. 90,338. It hasn't rolled over yet. The farmer did tell me that. He goes, I didn't drive it that much. And I guess after 55 years, that's probably about right. You know, you're talking about less than 2,000 miles a year. But it definitely got used. Yeah, the 69, I think, is what we ended up having that I learned how to drive on. It had a regular parking brake. I think they said the 67s and 68s had this handle. Windshield wipers work. I think the headlights are working. I wonder if you might be able to hear the static in it. Oh, we did.
Or does your heart belong to Jesus Christ? I can't answer that for you. You must be born again, or you will not see the kingdom of heaven.
It actually does have one. Oh my God! Even the damn dome light in this thing works. You got to be kidding me! I don't think I've ever seen a whole truck that had a dome light that worked. But I wonder where the damn... Oh, they don't come on with the... Yeah, it comes on when you turn on the headlight switch. It doesn't have interior lights with the switch in the door. It just comes on with the headlight switch. Yeah, I got an exhaust leak. That's all right. I got it right there. Between the manifold and the manifold. Oh yeah, I can see it. Right there. I don't know, guys. Tell me what you think. Like I said, I didn't need it, but I actually want a daily driver. And I've driven one of these for a couple of years when I was a lot younger, about 30 years ago. And they can do the job. And then on something like this, I probably would add power steering. I won't put power brakes on it. But power steering makes it easy when you're backing a trailer up over unlevel ground. Everything around here is up and down. There is no flat ground, so you're trying to back something heavy up over dips and hills and through ditches. It makes it nice to be able to have power steering where you can turn around and steer with one hand. And then with a 5-speed manual in this thing. I believe the shift pattern on this thing is for the Chevrolet 4-speed. And it's got a 7.06, I think, to 1 first gear. And then second is like 3.58. And then you have a big jump between third. Then it's like goes to 1.77. And then you go to your final drive 1-to-1. But it's just not a user-friendly transmission for the road. But for work purposes, you couldn't find something better. Whatever you hook on the back of this truck and you put it in first and let the clutch out, it's going to pull it. It is going to pull it, no questions asked. I've seen some pictures of this truck with firewood in the back. They was piled well over the cab, and the truck hardly even squatted with those helper springs on it. And that guy said, man, you put it in 4-low and let the clutch out, and he goes, it'll go anywhere you want it to go. And he goes, with those mud tires on the back, he goes, it didn't matter how muddy it was, as long as it didn't high center, it was going to go somewhere. So, good old truck. I think the turn signals work. Nope. Yep, yeah, they do. Damn. Old truck. Yeah, guys, I would appreciate any help. And I'm also looking to replace, these aren't the original mirrors. This one came with that little stalk. I think it was about a 5-inch diameter mirror on a little stem. But these were actually put on the truck, the way I understand, like almost on day one. And it's missing the mirror on the other side. I have the bracket, but if someone knows of some similar style mirrors that are pretty good quality, I'd like to replace them with that. And I just like the looks of them. And not only that, they're actually functional. And with some tires, yeah, and if someone knows a tire, I think I've nailed it down to a 235, 85, 16 is about the same width and height, tall as these tires, their overall diameter. But if someone knows of a tire that looks, I'm kind of looking for more of that vintage look, but I don't want a bias ply tire. And I found something real similar, but it's a bias tire, and I don't want that. Yeah, someone knows of some good make and model tires, I'd be appreciative. I thought about putting the mud grips that are on the back all the way around, but they, man, they're just so damn loud. These trucks are loud enough as it is, and this truck is not going to go off-road. It's just mainly going to be for some winter driving, and I'd rather have some tires that were better for ice and wet pavement than off-road. This truck will never probably get off a gravel road. So anybody's help out there, I'd appreciate it. Some tires and information on that Tremec swap and the upholstery for this seat. I've looked at some of the bigger distributor for parts for these trucks, and I haven't found anybody that's actually got a seat cover that looks similar to this. They got the ones that are they've stitched in the pleats, and they just my personal opinion, but I don't think they look very good. I mean, they look better than a torn seat for sure, but I just don't think they look very good in an old truck. They just look aftermarket. But again, that's just my opinion. And if someone knows anything about these rims, I can't imagine why anybody would want them nowadays unless you were just doing a real museum type restoration, but might be interested in selling these rims if somebody's interested. There's a set of 5 of them, and the ones on the truck have been holding air. Well, the tubes have been holding air, but they've been functional, and this one actually looks better shape than the ones on the truck. So 5 good rims. Yep, I'm actually impressed. I'm actually a little happier than I originally thought. It's in better shape than I'd imagined, and I don't think it'll take very long to put this thing on the road. It'll actually drive now. It's just 45, 50 miles an hour is about as fast as you're going to go. with the tires and the gearing, and the motor is just singing. So work on a transmission swap and get some good tires on it, fix that seat and put a floor mat in it, and maybe patch these rockers before they get worse. And then I don't know, maybe use some rust conversion. I know there's some out there that won't damage paint, and then just kind of wipe it down over the rusted areas and just turn it black. And then just clean the truck up, detail out the frame and grease the front end, and he'll use it. All right, guys, I hope somebody got something out of it. We're going to do something to this truck, and I hope y'all stick around. Like I said, we'll put some tires on it, fix up the interior, replace these rockers, and turn this thing back into a road warrior. All right, guys, that's all I got. Thanks.